Okay, hi everyone. Um, this is going to be a pretty short post, I think. I don't never know with myself. It's going to be an update to the Dillahunty Dodge, so-called. Just some background on it. What happened is Matt Dillahunty and Matt Slick had a recent debate. I think the title was, "Is Secular Humanism Superior to Christianity?" Now, following that debate, and when I started doing review of Great Debate G plus and blog post number 1, I had on my feed, there was a post there from Antonio Valentini, basically titled, "What is the Matt Dillahunty Dodge?" And on that there, it basically gave a brief explanation of what the Matt Dillahunty Dodge is, supposedly, and as well as that, it also then it appeared to cite what had happened in the recent debate. That's how I read the post. That's how I would expect other people to read the post. I don't see any indication in the post itself that people would read it any other way. But I've been doing a little bit of research on the Matt Dillahunty Dodge, and I find it interesting. If anyone else does, good. If not, then so what? And I'm going to share that here because I think it puts some interesting context to this Matt Dillahunty Dodge, and some background, some history, and also maybe points a way forward regarding the Dillahunty Dodge. Now, as I said, I first seen this Dodge, or reference to this Dodge, on a post by Antonio Valentini. But what I did was I went to Google Plus, I put in Matt Dillahunty Dodge into the top bar, just to see if because I'm pretty sure I'd seen someone else commenting, doing the same post. I'm not too sure whether this is a post that's going around there and Antonio and other people are sharing it, or what the situation is there. But I was looking for that post. But what I found was, instead, I found a post going back to November the 28th, 2015. Now, this was on the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network show. It was a discussion between Matt Slick and Andrew Rappaport, and what they were discussing, and what the beginning of the show, starting at 10 minutes and 5 seconds, I think, and what it starts to discuss is the Matt Dillahunty Dodge. So, Matt Slick is asked there to give a description of what that Dodge is, and this is what he says. The Dillahunty Dodge is exemplified best by Matt Dillahunty, the atheist whose MO, whose modus operandi, is to discuss things with people he disagrees with, but he never really commits to anything, so that he cannot be cross-examined. He dodges cross-examined by just not committing to anything. His strategy is to wait for someone else to make a statement, then he jumps on the statement and tries to get them to validate their statement. So that's called the Dillahunty Dodge. He doesn't commit, so he can't be cross-examined. That's the main thing. I'm sure he commits here and there to things, but he doesn't want his ideas cross-examined. In my opinion, it's two-pronged. It's a technique, but it's also an admission of a weakness of his position. So that's Dillahunty. That's Matt Slick on November 28th, 2015, providing a definition of the Matt Dillahunty Dodge. Now, if you if you go further on in that discussion, although he uses Matt Dillahunty as an example there, he extends that out to include many lack of belief atheists. So those people who describe their atheism as I lack belief in, and he's basically saying that many of them are doing much the same thing with their lack of belief stuff. But you can see that if you look at the actual show. I'm probably going to post a written. I'm going to do this in written form as well, so be on my profile if you want the links, because I'm going to refer to various links in this to give a bit of history. But that's what he said there. He extends it out to Atheists. Now, whether or not ascribing this inverted commas fallacy to Dillahunty is justified or not is really beyond the scope of this presentation. But I think I can say confidently that that kind of dodge, where an atheist refuses to take a position, they avoid taking a position, they just wait until you take a position, then they attack your position. It's certainly common on Google+. There's many examples of that. And so it's certainly found in that respect as a dodge. Whether or not it's appropriate to call it the Dillahunty Dodge is another question, but it's certainly a well-known dodge by some atheists in the Great Debate community. Now, given the fact that historically Matt Dillahunty has been a lacktheist or a lack of belief atheist, he's not strong atheist, philosophical atheist, then it wouldn't be surprising if he also did that kind of evasion or dodge on that there. But that wouldn't justify calling it the Dillahunty Dodge, because he would just be doing what other weak atheists would be doing when they try to avoid the burden of evidence take a position to avoid a burden of evidence, so they can dodge that and just attack theism on that there. So, as I said, I'm not persuaded yet that it's appropriate to call it the Dillahunty Dodge, but it's beyond the scope of this to go any further on it. But so that's what I did there. I did this G+ search for the Matt Dillahunty Dodge. I found that it goes back to November 28, 2015, something I wasn't aware of when I first read Antonio's post, which I kind of believe was just a kind of new thing on that there. But then I thought, okay, let's see if there's anything on Google on this. And what I found there was very interesting, I thought, because when I did a search for Google, the first result I got under the search term the Dillahunty Dodge, it was a website called silverweapon.com/Dillahunty Dodge. Now, what I found there was almost word for word what had been posted by substantively at least 2 paragraphs. In fact, it is word for word 2 paragraphs what's posted by Antonio. Now, I'm not saying that Antonio is plagiarizing there or not giving sources there. As I said previously, this seems to be a post that's going about, so it's well possible that Antonio just took this from someone else, reposted, the person he reposted from is reposting from somewhere else, and you get that domino effect there back to the source. But if you look at Antonio's post, basically it says this: what is the Dillahunty Dodge? The Dillahunty Dodge is not committing to any position during a discussion, so you can't be cross-examined. It is a technique first demonstrated by Hitchens in his debate against Frank Turek. It has later been developed into a debate strategy perfectly demonstrated here. It allows you to attack the arguments and beliefs of others while giving no answers or rebuttals to anything. Brilliant. Now I think it's fair to say, I mean, apart from the Hitchens Frank Turek reference there, which I'm not able to source or confirm, I think that's basically pretty much a summation of how Matt Slick has described the fallacy, so-called. But then he goes on to say this: Matt Dillahunty was challenged to account for immaterial, non-physical, immutable, universal, transcendental laws of logic in his atheistic worldview. Slick argued that because these laws of logic are conceptual, they necessarily originate from a mind. Given this, Slick reasoned that the laws of logic derive from an immaterial, immutable, universal, transcendental mind, i.e. the mind of God. To dodge this conclusion, Dillahunty argued that while the laws of logic are indeed not physical, they're also not conceptual. That is, he said they're not a product of mind, without defending this assertion. In response to this, Slick challenged Dillahunty to furnish a third option as to the essence of the laws of logic. Dillahunty was unable to furnish any viable third option. Credit to Matt Slick for completely stumping him on the very topic of the debate, but argued that, quote, there may be another option beyond physical and conceptual that we just don't know about. Okay, applause. So that's what's in Antonio Valentini's post. If you go to this website, basically it says, in an online debate with Christian apologist Matt Slick, atheist Matt Dillahunty was challenged to, and then it gives you all that non-physical, immutable stuff. It then gives you the next paragraph to dodge this conclusion, and then it gives you the air quote, there may be another option beyond physical and conceptual that we just don't know about. So it's word for word on those two paragraphs. Now that might sound a bit disinteresting, but what's interesting about it is that when it says in an online debate with Christian apologist Matt Slick, your mind automatically goes to the recent debate, but it's actually referencing a previous debate. And that previous debate was again a Bible thumping wingnut show on December the 7th, 2014. And it was set up at Dillahunty's request to address Matt Slick, referring to the Dillahunty fallacy. So now we start off with this recent post, the recent debate between Matt Slick and Dillahunty. We have the post going in from Valentina, possibly just resharing something from other people. We find out that it goes back to November 28, 2015. But now, when we look at this, then we are now back to a discussion going even further back on that there. And we're now back to December the 7th, 2014, almost 2 years ago. So that discussion between Dillahunty and Slick was specifically set up to discuss this fallacy stuff. And what's interesting in that is at the beginning of that, when Matt Slick describes the fallacy, he makes a reference to where the whole thing started and where the whole thing started, and he presents the fallacy there to Matt Slick as when we had that discussion back then in 2000 or 5 or 6 years ago. I asked you about this. You said you basically said that there was I asked you to provide a third option. You basically said, nope, there is a third option, but I'm not going to tell you about it, or you can't tell me about it. So that then puts us back to, I asked the question then, well, where's this discussion that took place, which seems to be where this originated, between Matt Slick and Matt Dillahunty? And guess what? It goes all the way back to February the 23rd, 2009, where Matt Slick called into, you guessed it, the Atheist Experience. So there's a 5-part discussion there between Matt Slick and Dillahunty on the Atheist Experience, where they have that whole conversation about the nature of logic. Near the end of that, you get the point where Matt Slick is pressing Dillahunty. Dillahunty's refusing to give what Dillahunty's saying, it's a false dichotomy, either conceptual or physical. Dichotomy should be A not A, so conceptual or not conceptual. Okay, and Slick was pushing him on that, and Dillahunty was prepared to say, well, okay, the laws of logic are not the absolute laws of logic. So the absolute laws are not conceptual. So he had said that basically if there were no minds, a rock would still be a rock, a thing would still be the same, the law of identity would still hold, etc. So that's the position he was taking, but he was saying, so given the fact that he's saying if there was no minds, then these would still hold, then, and obviously it's minds that conceive things, then for him the laws of logic, the absolute laws, are non-conceptual. But he was refusing, and then Slick was trying to get him to say, so if they're not conceptual, are they physical? And Dillahunty was refusing to say, but then he eventually said, okay, they are neither conceptual nor are they physical. And then Matt Slick was saying, okay, so where's the third option? Give me the third option. What else could they be? And I think the closest Dillahunty came to answer that was by saying, well, they're abstract, but what are abstract things? I mean, numbers are abstract, shapes are abstract, but aren't they things that we conceive of? Aren't they abstract conceptions? So I'm not too sure, unless he was going to posit, as I previously proposed, some sort of Platonic realm, but he didn't mention that, then it doesn't seem to be much of an answer. And it basically, the conversation was going nowhere at that point, with Slick making the statement, you can't even tell us what the laws of logic are. You say they're not conceptual, you say they're not physical, what are they? Tell us what they are, what else could they be? Now obviously, Slick, Dillahunty needs to avoid saying that they're conceptual without human beings, because that would point to a mind apart from human minds, and it would certainly lean towards something that would include God. But the conversation kind of whittled out there. They pressed it as much as they could. Dillahunty eventually put him on hold in typical Dillahunty style, cutting short the conversation. And that's back in 2009. And it's after that, 2009, where Matt Slick began to refer to the Dillahunty fallacy. And then he kept on referring to the Dillahunty fallacy. And then we have Dillahunty setting up this Bible-thumping wingnut discussion to basically challenge Matt Slick on this so-called fallacy. And they had that on December 2014. Obviously, that didn't, whatever happened there, it wasn't sufficient to stop Matt Slick from referring to that there, and that's where we get to the recent one, 2015, and then apparently, allegedly, in this recent debate, this subject was rehashed, and Dillahunty gave the same response. But that gave, I mean, for me, this is all news to me. I never knew that there was any history of this Dillahunty Dodge stuff. I certainly never knew it goes back to 2009, so 7 years ago. This is, or nearly 7 years ago, this is extending back to. In fact, yeah, more than 7 years, nearly 8 years, it's extending back to where this originated from and has been going on there. And here we are in 2016. They have this debate, and in this recent debate, Matt Slick raised this issue again about the nature of logic, and the allegation is that he once again went to this Dodge. That's yet to be confirmed, and I'll be confirming that when I do a review of the debate. But that gives a bit of a background there on this Dillahunty Dodge, all the way back to 2009. And it has evolved. If you remember, when Matt Dillahunty asked Slick to appear on the Bible Thumping Wingnut show to talk about this fallacy, in the beginning of that, when Matt Slick first described it, he said, well, it's where you basically said there's a third option, but you refused to provide that third option. And that's where it was then. But as you'd have heard me say earlier, it seems to have evolved since then to what I previously read out, where it's basically the allegation that Dillahunty discusses things with people he disagrees with, but he never really commits to anything so that he can dodge cross-examination. So there's a bit of evolution of the fallacy there from 2009 to 2016, but that's a bit of a history about it. And for me, that was interesting. It puts the whole thing in a new light. I want to emphasize that in no way am I saying that Antonio plagiarized from that website. I can well see how it could just be a resharing of posts done in blissful ignorance, without knowledge of that website or the history there, just as I was ignorant of it when I did my first review post. But what I'd recommend is, if you're interested in Matt Dillahunty and Slick, then I'm going to post after this. I'm going to post the written version of this, post that on my Google Plus profile. All the links are there. The dates might make more sense reading it that way than me speaking about it. But if you're interested in it, you want to get an idea of the historical background to this Dodge, in inverted commas, and how it's evolved, then go through all the links, start from the earliest in 2009, go to the 2014, 2015, and that'll bring you up to date on where we are on it. But now that the history of this is more clear in my mind, all that remains to be done is to ascertain whether in the recent debate, 2016, there was that repeated conversation with the same response from Dillahunty, i.e., saying it's not conceptual, not physical, but then not being able to give another option, and appealing to, well, we don't know just now, we might know one day, which in my view is a non-response, it's a complete non-response, whether he did that again, and whether or not there is any justification at all from this most recent debate to be calling this the Matt Dillahunty Dodge. So that's where we are just now. I'm going to stop the hangout there, download it, edit it, maybe, and then once I've done that, I'll then post a written version of everything I've went over here, and the next week or so I'll be doing I think I'm going to do a quick review of the debate, just the main points of their debate, and then maybe a more thorough one later on. But that's it for now. Enjoy.